So just to review, the last video we did, we introduced the equalizer. Okay, so remember the EQ on a sound system a soundboard is usually different than what you got at home. At home you might have a graphic EQ, or you might just have the treble bass knob. Okay, the parametric EQ gives you full control of any frequency you want. Okay, and so you can boost it or cut it at almost any frequency along the normal hearing spectrum. Okay, so in order to know what to boost and cut at what frequency, and I think that's where it gets really confusing, you need to understand how sound works, the physics of sound. Okay, so this is like your only physics classroom I'll do. Okay, this is one of those times where I wish I spent more time paying attention in high school and college physics class, okay, on the physics of sound. So if you ever find yourself in a classroom situation in physics and they're talking about the physics of sound, or in a math class when they're talking about the sine wave, okay, pay attention. Okay, try to absorb as much as that, because the better you understand that, the better you'll be at doing sound. Okay, so the first thing is explaining what sound is. Okay, what sound is just the moving of molecules, right? So if someone hits the snare on the drum, okay, it vibrates. The drum vibrates, and it vibrates the air molecules, and then that bumps into other air molecules and bumps into other air molecules, and it expands from there until you're in the back of the room, and then you hear it. Okay, and then it vibrates your eardrums. Okay, and that vibration of the eardrums sends a signal to your brain. Okay, so you know whether it's a low tone or a high tone. Okay, what it normally sounds like. Okay, so how does it do that? Well, what's going on is it's sending out a wave. It's sending out sound waves. Okay, and a sound wave. See, this is my physics class. A sound wave looks like this. This is a typical sine wave. Okay, you see this in math classes. You see this in your physics class. Okay, this is a sine wave. Okay, if you were ever to need to visualize what sound looks like, go next time you go by a pond or lake or something like that. Take a rock and throw it into the pond. Okay, and then when the rock hits the water, you get these waves that sort of ripple out. Okay, that's in a sense what sound sounds like. Okay, so where that rock hits the water is like the drummer hitting the drum pad. Okay, the snare, and from there, if you were able to visualize sound, it will kind of look like the waterways. Okay, and if you're in a small pond and you made a big enough splash, and just watch the waves as it hits the edge of the pond, or hits something that's not movable, what happens to the wave? It bounces and reflects off of it and goes back towards the center, right? Okay, and if the pond is small enough, like if you do this in your sink or something like that, or your bathtub or something like that, then you see waves. Once it hits the end, okay, it starts bouncing back and forth. Okay, that's known as reverberation. Okay, and then we reverberate in sound rooms all the time. Okay, so this is a single cycle of sound. This is a single cycle. So math is a full single cycle is 360 degrees, right? Okay, so this is a full cycle of sound. Okay, now how you translate that into hertz? Okay, so in this EQ you deal with hertz. Okay, from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. Okay, that is what you are. That's the range you're dealing with. Okay, so what's a hertz? Okay, a A hertz is the number of cycles, sine cycles, that happen in a second. Okay, so 1 hertz is 1 cycle in a second. Okay, 20 hertz is 20 cycles, 20 complete cycles in a second. That's 20 hertz. Okay, so 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz is 20,000 cycles in a second. Okay, so you see the sound waves, they're kind of like bouncing like that, and then the looser the wave, the less cycles, to us we hear it, the lower the tone. Okay, the higher the cycle, the more cycle, the higher the tone. Okay, now then you have how big the waves are. Okay, the bigger the splash, the bigger the wave, right? Okay, same for sound. You take your drumstick and you pound it on, like our drummer, you pound it on that hi-hat, right? Okay, the harder you hit on the hi-hat, the higher the crest and trough. Okay, those of you that in physics know that that's a crest and that's a trough, right? So the higher the crest and the lower the trough dictates how loud it is, the decibel level. Okay, decibel is a ratio. Okay, it came up in the 1930s by Bell Laboratories. Okay, it's named after Alexander Bell. Alexander Graham Bell, you know, inventor of the telephone, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so deci in decibel, the first half of it, the root word is deci, and that means 10. Okay, that means 10, right? Deci is 10. Okay, Bell is named after Alexander Graham Bell. Okay, or Bell Laboratories. Why they dropped the second L, I don't know. So it's decibel with only one L. Okay, so and that dictates how loud things are. So the higher the decibel level, the louder it gets in your ears. Okay, so I'm going to show you what sound sounds like, and the better you get with knowing what the tones are, the better you'll get at EQing. Okay, so really quick, I threw in here my iTouch, and I have a program that's a tone generator. Okay, so I'm going to generate a tone at 100 hertz. So at 100 hertz, okay, at 100 hertz, that's 100 cycles in a second. Okay, so this is my spectrum analyzer. Okay, so it analyzes down to 32 hertz all the way up to 16 kilohertz, 16 kilohertz. Okay, so you should be able to, if I do this right, we should be able to see the spike at 100 hertz, which should be right about here somewhere. Okay. So you get feedback. This is why a spectrum analyzer is kind of nice to have while you're doing sound. Because if you're doing sound and you get this feedback that sounds like this, okay, you'll get a spike on your spectrum analyzer. Okay, right at the 100 hertz. Okay, but if you just get used to hearing and knowing what 100 hertz sounds like, then you don't have a spectrum analyzer. You go, oh, that's down at the 100 hertz level. Then you could take your parametric EQ and you can sweep the lower frequency and cut it, and then you'll eliminate the feedback. Okay, so let's try this at, let's do it at 1K. So 1 kilohertz or 1,000 hertz. Okay, so now it spikes at about 1 kilohertz. It's exactly 1 kilohertz. Okay, so let's try it at, this is going to hurt, guys. Let's try it at 10Ks. 10K. This is not even loud. This is only at like 70 decibels. Okay. All right. So you can see the spike going up. Okay. Now, the nice thing about knowing that is just knowing where you're at. Okay. So that's how sound works. Now, how does it relate to music. Okay, let me turn this off. I'm not getting a signal on the board. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, let me give you another image to look at. Okay, you notice on top of here is a piano keyboard. Okay, the interesting thing is the piano is like the only instrument that covers almost the entire spectrum. Okay, it covers all the way. The lowest key on the piano is 28 hertz, and the highest key on the piano is about 4,000 hertz or 4 kilohertz. Okay, so you notice that that's a piano. That's pretty much the full range. Okay, so all these color lines below this, and you should get yourself this chart. And I just Googled it. Just Google frequencies of instruments or something like that, and there's tons of charts out there. I just Googled this one, okay, not too long ago, and each one of these shows me the range of a certain instrument. Okay, so for example, the very top one is called a violin, right? It's a violin. The violin range is from about 196 hertz, 196 hertz, up to 3,520 hertz. So from about 200 hertz up to about 4 kilohertz. Okay, that's a violin. So if you're EQing a violin, if you're sitting there and you got a violin, and we have a violin in one of our services, right? Okay, if we're EQing a violin and you're EQing down by 80 hertz, well, that's below the range of the instrument. So there's no reason to EQ that down that low. That's below the range of that instrument. Okay, so you want to EQ within the range of the instrument. Okay, same. So on this one, it's violin, and the next line is a viola, cello, bass. Here's your bass here. Okay, that's not your bass guitar, by the way. Okay, trumpets, trombones. These are your those type of instruments. Then you got the greens are the piccolo, the flutes, the oboe. You know, the bassoon, that kind of stuff is all in here. The orange is like string instruments like the harp, the piano. You see that big long orange is the piano. Okay, and then the red is like, I don't know, they're like xylophones and stuff like that. Okay, this purple one down here are like what you would normally get in your worship band, is like guitars. Okay, so the top purple is a regular acoustic guitar. A regular acoustic guitar goes from about 73 hertz up to about 1.3 kilohertz. Okay, so that's the range of a acoustic guitar. Okay, a bass guitar is the next one down here. A bass guitar goes all the way down to 31 hertz and up to about 350 hertz. Okay, so if you really are good with your EQ, when you select that channel and you're dealing with it, what you should do is just kill all the frequency above that range and below that range, and then you only have to deal with that range. If you cut out all the other stuff, then you cut out all the other sound artifacts that might come through because of the system itself. Okay. Now, what's really interesting is the vocals. Down at the bottom, the last line there, that's a vocal. That's a human voice. Okay. Now, this is an average human voice. You should be able to look up difference between a male and a female. Okay. So this one, they say it's about 82 hertz up to about 650 hertz. So humans don't get too big of a range. Okay. And that's probably both male and female. So if you talk about male, it's probably just the lower end of that. The female is maybe just a little bit higher end of that. Okay, so that's really important to know, and you guys should get yourself a chart similar to this, and so that when you start EQing, you can look at the chart and says, okay, well, what do I need to EQ at what frequency does this instrument put out? Okay, then you can adjust for that specific instrument. Makes no sense if you're sitting there with, let's say, a bass guitar that the highest range is 400 hertz, 500 hertz, and you're sitting there boosting at 2 kilohertz. Why boost at 2 kilohertz? Okay, the range of that instrument isn't that high. Okay, so what you'll probably end up doing is getting feedback or boosting just noise. Okay, and then that's when things start sounding really muddy. Okay, and not so good. Okay, so that is how sound works, and that's why it's so important to know what sound works as. If we had went to the piano, we don't have time for it, but if we had went to the piano, I could take the same spectral analyzer, hit the keys, and when you hit that key, it'll spike at that frequency. Okay, you should do that. If you got yourself a spectrum analyzer, go out to a keyboard, go out to an instrument, and have it played, and then you can see where in the spectrum it's kind of picking up. Okay, so now when you're sitting in a worship set, okay, and you're the sound technician for a worship set, what you want is a nice full range of music. Okay, so if you're just getting like a small clump, like in the mid or low end, then you're not getting the breadth of the music. Okay, so this spectrum should be almost all, kind of a nice bell curve kind of thing in here. Okay, so those are nice things to know. That's an important concept in sound. So you're much more than a person that just flips on a switch. You have to understand these concepts in order to properly EQ a performance. Okay, so the third part of this video series on EQing will be next week when we'll talk about specific instruments and how to EQ specific instruments. Okay, and then see how it works. Okay, so we'll see if we can get some musicians in here. Maybe if you get them to play guitar. I got a piano sampler music. Maybe we'll just do that, and then we can EQ it, and then actually listen to the effects of certain frequency on certain instruments and how it changes as you cut and boost on those frequency. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.